This lecture is part of the Architecture Design Studio, where we intend to recognize and explore the position of architecture in an urban context. It is about public spaces and is titled Public Space Preoccupations. This session will commence with a discourse by architect Vidhya Mohankumar, post which the students could discuss their work with her. Vidhya Mohankumar is an architect and an urban designer with over 15 years of work experience in India, Ireland, and the United States. Her work is focused on creating cities that are people-oriented and centered around transit as part of a sustainable development agenda that she is passionate about. Her approach is driven by research that is grounded and intersectional as a way to understand everyday urbanism in cities. In 2011, Vidya founded Urban Design Collective, or the UDC, a collaborative platform for architects, urban designers, and planners to create livable cities through participatory planning. With clientele ranging from state governments, ULBs, country and town councils, real estate developers, private sector firms, and NGOs, her urban design projects exhibit a wide variety of master plans for cities, towns, station areas, harbor areas, as well as redevelopment plans for town centers and public spaces and brownfield sites. She has also been involved in several strategic planning projects, regional plans, local area plans, campus master plans, and urban design studies for existing developments in various cities around the world. In addition to this, sorry, she also mentors the smart city projects in Hubli and Agartala as a national expert on public space design under CITIIS program with the National Institute of Urban Affairs. And for the past 10 years, she's been advocating sustainable development practices as a guest faculty at various universities in India. We're really excited to have you with us today, ma'am. I invite you to begin the lecture.
Thanks, Shalini. It sounded like a very long bio, but thank you for having me. Salila, thank you for inviting me. I mean, there was also like some scheduling things and, for your patience with, seeing this through. I hope you will enjoy the talk that I'm going to make now. It's, as you can see, it's titled Public Space Preoccupations. What I'm going to do is, it's actually a presentation in chronological order of the work that was done by us at Urban Design Collective since our inception. So I'm turning off my video as I mentioned, and we can get started. So 2011, October is when UDC was sort of informally established. And one of the first projects that I got to work on in 2012 was this PVAC regional planning framework, which is actually the Pondicherry, Virupuram, Auroville, and Cuddalore regional planning framework. This was a project done as a consultancy for Intact Pondicherry, and it involved looking at a regional planning framework for an area covering about 2,500 square kilometers, centered around Pondicherry. And these were the predominantly large towns that fell within this radius. That's kind of what you can see in this, this brochure that was made as part of a communication tool for sending out information about this project itself. As part of the regional planning framework, we looked at ways for sustainable regional development, strengthening of regional resources and resource management. And we looked at it from a point of view of different sectors of development, and that included environment and mobility and land resource, agriculture, waste. And these were all themes that sort of came up as we were conducting public consultations across these towns. I think what defined this project also was the very consultative nature of it. Uh, we traveled to all of these towns. Our team, we traveled to all of these towns, and we conducted in each of these towns, several meetings where we discussed specific thematics that would then sort of feed into the framework itself. For instance, one meeting was conducted exclusively with farmers from the region who spoke to us about land, water, electricity, and various resources that impact them and their livelihoods. And then we had other meetings with, the collectors of all of these towns and so on, like and then of course their agencies, various agencies, implementing agencies that fall within them. So at the this was, as I said, a project that was largely defined by the consultative process, and our framework for regional development really was anchored to the inputs that we got from this. I want to stress at this point the importance of such an approach, because the if you look at the scale that we were dealing with, it was 2,500 square kilometers and covering multiple towns, and it would have been impossible for us to have completed this in exercise in such a short span of time without the very valuable inputs of the people that participated and told us about the evolution of their towns and their cities, and their sort of aspirations, their challenges, and issues that they were facing. So this was sort of very kind of a path-breaking project that defined for us the way in which we would work going forward itself. So some press coverage that we got simply because there was a lot of patronage at the collector level. Another eye-opening thing about this project was that the ease with which we were able to reach so many different stakeholders in the case of smaller cities. I think I do feel that conducting a similar exercise in a larger city would have been very challenging, but the level of participation, or the openness for participation, and was a lot more refreshing for me, at least, to see in these smaller towns. We had people who came for our meetings, with like printed A4 sheets in which they had, clearly outlined all of their issues, and, even solutions of what they wanted and things like that, and handed over a copy to us. And that all of these were, sort of very eye-opening to see that there is an interest in participating in the, well-being of your physical environment itself. Um, we also, as a way for us to start, engaging at a, sort of ground level with our own neighborhoods. This was also the year that we started conducting a lot of curated city walks. And these walks were, across domains. Like, for instance, we conducted a series of walks in Pondicherry for school children, uh, um, as a way to raise awareness on the heritage value of their schools and their neighborhoods. It's interesting to note that the three schools that we worked with were the same three schools that were shown in the movie Life of Pi. And they were all grade A heritage buildings, and they were all in extremely dilapidated condition. And none of these school kids knew anything about, the value of those buildings, or the fact that they were, celebrated pieces of architecture and such an invaluable part of the tangible heritage of that city. This series of walks conducted for the students of these schools were a way to instill sense of civic pride among them, for their neighborhood, for their school buildings, and for their, sort of, their city as such. We also conducted a series of, like what we were like what we call the Jane Jacobs walks, and these were, following the ideology of Jane Jacobs, who was, not sure if many of you are aware of, an activist slash urbanist, uh, who operated out of Canada and America, and known very, very famously for her book Death and Life of Great American Cities. She operated primarily at the neighborhood level, and her whole ideology was based on understanding and knowing what is happening in your immediate physical environment, and being able to sort of preserve, conserve the things that really mattered, the things that really contributed to the character of that place. So in that essence, we started exploring neighborhoods in our own city where we operate in Chennai. This is a walk conducted in Georgetown, which is where the city of Chennai originated. Um, so we began to sort of unearth stories about buildings, about people, about practices, and so on, and sharing these with fellow walkers as a way for us to also know better about the cities that we live in. In the process, we also engaged in some kind of documentation, like this is one walk where we encouraged our fellow participants to document the windows of Georgetown, and this was compiled into a really small publication, in which we were able to see a range of windows. It was very interesting because, in some sense, it became an exercise where we traced the evolution of this neighborhood through the architectural design of the windows itself. Um, and we were able to see very distinctly different styles that belong to different eras in this one neighborhood, which was, I mean, it was such a marker of evolution that you would normally kind of not take it that seriously, like to study a neighborhood through its windows. Sorry, I think I'm just wondering, I think somebody's audio is on and there's a little bit of disturbance. If everyone could just mute, that would be useful because it's a bit distracting. Okay, I'm moving on. The subsequent year, we were approached by an RWA in Chennai who wanted to look at their street, and look at it from a perspective of making it a walkable street. Also coupled with the fact that this particular street had was a 1 kilometer stretch, and in that 1 kilometer stretch, there were about 8 schools, which meant that there were that many school students that were, using this particular street. And another issue that was, resultant of this fact is that a lot of them, because the street was not walkable enough, parents preferred to drop them off in their cars or two-wheelers, resulting in a lot of traffic congestion in the mornings when school hours were in play. So the idea was also to see if, by converting this into a walkable street, if there would be a shift to have parents be more inclined to send their kids to school by walk or by cycle, and in that sense, be able to reduce the congestion on the street. So this is, as you can see, a before and after image of what the street was and what it is now. Um, so just a couple of images that. Okay, moving on. 2014, we had this opportunity to be part of a sort of a neighborhood festival, where kind of like a carnival which was focused on conservation, and we were invited to sort of put up some kind of an installation that would talk to that particular theme of conservation that they were working with. What we did was a very, a quick installation that is called "Where is Your Chennai," which we subsequently converted into a tool that we used in several other projects as well, for different, as more like a data collection tool that we used to encourage participation from people. So in this case, we were trying to gather information on, what is a cultural asset that's rooted in the neighborhood that the person is coming from, and how it could, how they would, sort of, how they feel it's worth holding on to. Like, so that was the thing that we were trying to collect from our participants. Um, we subsequently repeated this exercise in Pondicherry, and in Pondicherry again, we attempted to document various intangible heritage resources that were in the city. And this information was handed over to Intact, who were at that point putting together a portal which was collecting all of the tangible and intangible heritage aspects of that particular city. So this is a second instance where we use this installation. A third instance was where this was done in Pune, and in where it was used as a way to document and record places of joy and places that people avoid in the city. And resulted in a series of maps that were then put out as a gallery display, gallery exhibit, um, in one of the city's art galleries. So the data was basically converted into a sort of, an art exhibit. But I think it what it did was it kind of, made that data a lot more accessible to people that visited, because they were it encouraged a lot of questions. It sort of got people talking about why they avoid certain places in the city, and how those places that give them joy could be then studied to understand what is it that uh, you know contributed to it being joyous places, and how those characteristics could then be replicated in other places. So effectively, what this is for us is it's a tool that we do continue to keep using in many different contexts to yield very different results each time. This was another project that we did. It's called the People's Puppet Project, where again we were working in the domain of heritage in Pondicherry, and it was this was project in collaboration with this puppet theater group called Snuff Puppets from Australia, and the ideology is that they work with the participants, and you create a script for a storyline, and then you design and make these really large scale puppets that look like this. And then they also teach you how to perform inside of these puppets, because each of these large puppets, they're they're bigger than us. Okay, like like each of them are about the size of a floor, or like a building floor or two, in fact. And it's also how you perform inside of these. And so the participants in our workshop came up with a storyline that involved the erasure of oral history, and the sort of intangible aspects that make our culture and our sort of human settlements. And we had a and these puppets were then paraded through MG Road in the city, and then finally reached the beach promenade in Pondicherry. And a 20-minute play that they had scripted storyline for was performed at the beach. And so, yeah, this was another attempt to look at a very different medium to convey the message of conservation. Um, we also worked on the same year a cycle network plan for Chennai. Again, this was in the context of public bike sharing systems that were, being rolled out as part of the smart city mission at that point. So the city had identified places where public bike sharing units would be installed, but without the network for the cycle infrastructure to be in place. So this project was involved in assessment of all the streets within the Chennai Corporation area, and to do an assessment of the streets and under various parameters, and provide recommendations on what kind of cycling infrastructure could be put in place. So then, yeah, I mean, it broke it down into smaller divisions of geographic divisions within the larger corporation area, and also looked into types of interventions at intersection and so on. Like basically a plan that could be quickly operationalized, and using some of the existing infrastructure itself, and uh, also identifying if certain places, it was just not possible and that it would have to be shared and so on. But at least a complete network was put in place. Um, the year after that, continuation of working with the Corporation of Chennai, we were part of what is called the Public Space Design Workshop, where we uh, helped, sort of put together a syllabus and a series of workshops where we trained about 80 municipal engineers on public space design and street design, like over a span of a year, actually. So each workshop set was conducted over a period of 5 weeks. The engineers would come for 1 day a week, and they were taught the basics of street design, how you reclaim or how you sort of delineate your right of way, and the ingraining in them the idea of equitable distribution of street space, and that you don't streets are not designed just for vehicles, and that there are several other stakeholders involved, pedestrians, cyclists, vendors, so on, and how all of these could be brought into an integrated design approach for our city streets. Um, so over the course of so we did this for 5 batches of engineers, and over the course of 5 batches, like every batch would be given an actual street in the city, and with the survey drawing, and then they would be working um, on the design for that particular street. And these designs would then, at the end of their workshop, be presented to the commissioner, and if they were, and then they also got the opportunity to sort of go ahead and implement some of these streets if the commissioner, sort of felt that they were doable, and they liked the designs were well received. So so among the many different streets that we took up and designed during this workshop, it's interesting to note that several of these have actually been implemented since as well. As per the designs that were made with the engineers. Just to give you some sense, this is like a visualization of the kind of street that they took up, and then the kind of changes that the engineers envisioned on these streets. So a street like this, they wanted to have it converted into something like this, and a street like this, they wanted to have converted into something like this, and so on. 2015 was also the year that we started City Observer. City Observer is our biannual journal on cities that we have been publishing since 2015 June. We are actually due for our next issue next month, in fact. That would be our 12th issue, if I'm getting the math right. City Observer looks at is an opportunity for us to learn from the larger fraternity of what we call urbanophiles. We've had the good fortune of having people from all over the world show interest to write for us over these years. And I think we've very, very large fraternity of City Observer contributors at this moment. Our journal looks at several different thematics every time. We don't have a theme for an issue, but then we have several different lenses through which we interrogate cities in each issue, and these spread across themes of art and the city, mobility and the city, community engagement. Um, uh, there's one column that looks at project documentation where somebody writes to us about an urban design project that they visited firsthand and the experience of it. There's also one column exclusively for faculty who teach urban design, who also have shared their urban design studio projects in that particular column, and so on. Um, so the 2016 was an interesting year for us. We got to work on a project called Friends of Public Transport. This was a sort of a seed that came out of a, a project that was rooted in um, trying to understand the efficacy of the sustainable development goals at a local level. So it was a research commissioned by the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies in Potsdam, Germany. They wanted to see across the comparison of three cities, which is Chennai, Mexico City, and Santo Domingo. And we took SDG 11 and particularly mobility sector within SDG 11 and tried to understand the implication of a global a target uh, which sort of told you whether you were doing well or not in that particular sector and how it actually translates to action and change on the ground. In some sense, it was a conversation centered around, big data, small data, where we, as a methodology for this study, this is a common methodology across the three cities that we were looking at. So we conducted surveys on transit experiences. So we spoke to about 100 daily commuters and try to understand very closely their patterns of commute and the various challenges that they face, and and had a sort of comparative analysis with the other two cities to see how these sort of translate on the ground, and that the only true measure of success, or rather an indicator, a performance indicator, would have to be based on user experience and not on any kind of statistical data. I mean, that was actually the sort of hypothesis that we were aiming to prove through our study. So just to get a sense, some of the issues that came up repeatedly from our users and so on. This was another project. So 2015, I'm not sure if you all remember, was a very difficult year. 2015 December in Chennai was when we had those very devastating floods. A lot of lives were lost at that point, and water became a big focal point for a lot of conversations, and as well as projects and initiatives, and also started attracting a lot of funding from agencies outside, global agencies, banks, and so on. This was sort of a project that we did with Goethe Institute in Chennai, where we worked with citizens to arrive at decentralized, sort of smaller, ways in which we could manage our water resources better. So these were like neighborhood level solutions, street level solutions that, we encouraged our participants to sort of come together and brainstorm. And so we conducted a series of these workshops where we assembled very local level ideas, because there's one thing to have large spatial water master plans and so on, and operationalizing them at that scale becomes very difficult. So in that sense, it seemed like something a little bit more bite-sized to work at a neighborhood scale and to understand problems that citizens could see themselves, and urging them to see if they could come up with certain solutions. Of course, we gave them a framework and certain guiding cues for how they could discuss, debate, and come up with solutions that were actually viable enough that they could put across. But yeah, like within the sort of framework, we were able to come up with several different ideas uh, from a very diverse set of diverse set of like citizens who were, concerned about what was going on in their own city. This was another project that we did, the Ururalka Kupum project. It started very interestingly. Ururalka Kupum is a fishing village in the southern part of Chennai, and um, there was an issue with sanitation infrastructure, or rather deficit in sanitation infrastructure that they were having. So there was a local NGO called Vetiver Collective who came asking if we could help them quantify and sort of figure out a way to understand the sanitation deficit and propose a solution that could be built or whatever, like operationalized for them. uh, when we started working on the ground, I think the first thing that we wanted to do was that there was no record of this, or at least part of half of this settlement was not recorded on any map of the city. So we started out by actually documenting the settlement and drawing out, measure drawing this whole place up, and then giving them numbers to be, as identifiers, so that we would be able to go back and verify if the data is correct. And then for each of the households, we had we conducted household surveys to understand their demand and consumption rates, and then and so based on all of this, a very sort of like, what we in very simple terms, what we did was a data-backed approach to understanding this deficit and how it could be met with. Um, so after very extensive period of data collection, vetting, and all of that, we kind of held this community meeting, which is what you're seeing in this picture here, and we invited the everybody in the community to come and see what we had done, and also, of course, to vet some of that data that we had put together as well. And then showed them the various interventions that we were proposing, and sought consensus as to whether that's what they like. But I think more than that, I think what was most interesting for us was the process. Like, what started out as a project that wanted to identify a sanitation infrastructure deficit ended up highlighting a lot of other issues for us. Like, we understood that there was, because of the sanitation infrastructure deficit, there were no toilets in majority of their houses. The most households either use the community toilets, or they would share a toilet with their neighbors, some of whom who had toilets, uh, and uh, and then most often women found it very difficult once it became dark, and that raised another problem. They didn't have any street lights, so the pathway to the community toilets were always not lit, and therefore after sundown it was very difficult for women to actually access the community toilets. And even otherwise as well, another problem was that because of the issue with toilet deficit and sanitation infrastructure deficit, the men resorted to open defecation along the shores and allowed the women access to the toilets. So you can see that there's a sort of a ripple effect of a problem that we're seeing. So the open defecation as well, was resulting in health issues for the kids, because the kids would play on the shore, and they were sort of constantly falling sick, and so on. So there's so many different things that came up in the process. So we ended up actually proposing solutions that kind of looked at a holistic way to address all of these problems together, rather than just saying, okay, listen, you just need to put in sanitation infrastructure that meet this kind of a demand, and so on. So moving on, 2017, we had a very interesting opportunity to uh, work on this project in Matanjeri. This was an exhibit that was curated by Riaz Komu at Uru Art Harbor, which is one of the Kochi Biennale venues as well. The theme of the exhibition itself was Matanjeri, and we were asked to sort of interpret it in any way. We were a part of an ensemble of 13 artists, and we had to there was nothing other than the fact that other than Matanjari that was given to us, and it was like our own response to it. So as Ramzan Collective, our response was to look at 150 years of the development history of this place. So we traced back 150 years of what was happening here, and just trying to understand the evolution of the place, and that sort of threw up three prominent themes for us, which was lost opportunities, mixed priorities, and resilient communities. And this was largely just from the way we were able to collect the data and sort of decode it, and this is what came up for us, like in a very organic process rather. And as the name says, I mean, we also it became the title for our exhibit itself. Uh, there were multiple lost opportunities, like things that could have resulted in a much more, prosperous, phase for this place, but that did not materialize. And then mixed priorities, as is obvious, that there was investment being made in places that need not have been prioritized at all. And then the third thematic was, of course, the very strong social infrastructure that existed. Matanjeri, if you all know, is like a very diverse cosmopolitan settlement from a very long time ago, right from its origin has been that way, and it has retained its character that way. And the sort of resilience of the communities and their will to support each other and uplift each other has always been a recurring theme through time that we have seen. So yeah, this exhibit, sort of for us was really, I mean, a beautiful experience, and a very, you know, in a very quick way to learn something about this place and to, put it together and present it, in a very graphic format for a lay person to come and understand what is going on. Like, I think we had it was very heartening to see the response where people told us that, 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 they were surprised, or rather, like, some of them said they were even ashamed that somebody had to come from Chennai and tell them about their city. But I guess, from our point of view, it was about putting this information out. We had the mayor of the city as well come and see this exhibit, and was very appreciative of, what it meant, and, sort of tracing back, and then as a way to keep moving forward. Um, so this year we also worked as part of, there was a coalition called Coupe Matters, and this was our first foray into the realm of waste management. Coupe in Tamil means garbage, and it was sort of an attempt to see how waste management processes and practices in the city could be reformed. with citizen participation as well. And so there were multiple components to this project. One was like awareness, raising awareness, and also, sort of influencing government policy on waste management. We came up with a charter, which we a citizens charter for waste as a result of this exercise. And across and we have 15 zones in Chennai, and they were what we conducted as Kupe Tiruviras, which were basically waste carnivals. And waste carnivals were conducted in each zone. And the purpose of the waste carnival was, of course, one was to build momentum for the citizens charter, but two was also to uh, raise awareness on alternative products and alternative ways of life that would encourage you to do your reduce, reuse, recycle, and so on. um, the year after that, we got an opportunity to work on this project called Eyes on the Canal. Uh, this was a project that looked at reviving a section of the Buckingham Canal, which flows through Chennai. Buckingham Canal is a man-made canal which actually originates closer to Vijayawada and flows all the way down to close to Pondicherry, Marakanam. It's covers about 800 kilometers, if I'm right, and a 48-kilometer section flows through the city of Chennai in the north-south direction. The entire canal, if you trace its geography, flows parallel to the coast, and a 48-kilometer stretch cuts right through the city of Chennai. Incidentally, the canal was built starting from 1802 to 1878, and by the British. And the portion that flows through Chennai is the most polluted portion of this canal itself. So the context for you know bringing back the eyes on this canal was also, again, dates back to the 2015 floods. So the canal in its original function was meant to be for navigation, but what it also did was that it became a buffer for flood protection. That was it, because it was able to cushion in the additional waters if there were ebbs and flows in the rivers, because of the if you look at the geography, even in this image that I have here, this is the Adyar River, and this is the Kuam River, the two rivers that flow through Chennai in the east-west direction. And this canal flows in the north-south. And if there is a surge in the flow in the rivers, then in its original function, it would be able to take that ebb and flow, and therefore was was always a sort of flood, kind of, incidentally became a flood protection measure as well for the city. What happened now is, with all of the pollution and the encroachment in the canal, its function had been compromised, and therefore, we've been seeing repeated flooding incidents along the river banks and so on. So in the context of building city resilience is where this project site was selected, and um, we had picked a 3.5 kilometer stretch in the southern part, which is concentrated here in the map here, like south of the Adyar River. This portion was selected as a specific site for intervention, as a demonstration site. Now, what we did was we hosted a national level competition where we invited, a wider pool of ideas. We received, there was a lot of participation. About 81 entries came in, completed entries that came in, and we had 28 shortlisted, and three winning entries were then chosen to be further developed into workable solutions that were then presented to various government agencies that were working on it. Um, at the moment, there are certain projects being implemented along the same stretch that we worked on. All of these, again, working to create public spaces, and to change general public opinion about what they feel about this canal. Incidentally, as you know, as part of our perception surveys, we realized that a lot of people did not even identify this canal, could not identify this canal as part of the city's larger ecosystem, and many of them thought it was a drain, in fact. Um, there were a series of public exhibitions, both of our studies that spoke about the need for intervention of this on this site, as well as the various ideas, the 28 shortlisted ideas that came out and that were put out for public opinion and voting as well. Um, we also worked on a very interesting project at Ranchi this year, and this was a sort of a capacity building exercise where we worked in slums and to facilitate, again, a data-backed approach to delivering better services here. So what we did is we went to these slums in Ranchi and we worked with adolescent girls and we taught them how to measure draw the settlement. Again, similar to what we did at Urupam in Chennai, but we kind of made this process that we could then teach to someone else so they could do what we did at Urupam. So we created a sort of a pictorial legend for them. We taught adolescent girls how to measure their settlement and draw a very crude map of their slum and put it together and then number it and get a sense of how many people are living there. Conduct some household surveys and get some very basic data because more often than not, what they do is they go to their counselor, cooperator, and they would be like, we don't have water. But what if they could actually go and be a little bit more specific and say that, they don't have, they're like 40 households and they're like so many, like, I don't know, like 300 people. And, each person needs 135 liters of water as per WHO guidelines. And currently the amount of water that they're receiving is so much, and therefore they have a deficit of so much. And if that deficit could be met, if they were able to quantify and, tell their cooperator more specifically that I need these many liters of water rather than saying I need water, right? Because if you just go and say I need water, they might send one tanker lorry and then say I sent you water, why are you asking me again? But this way, it improves the delivery of basic services for them as well in a way that is constructive for both parties. So this is what this project was about. We also launched what we call our Observe program this year. This is a program that's aimed at high school children, and it's about having them take civic responsibility and by being aware of their surroundings in a manner that kind of again goes back to what I mentioned when we were talking about the curated city walks. So it's like they're aware of what's happening there, which instills a sense of pride and responsibility for their neighborhoods, whether it's around their schools or whether it's around their residences, and to also give them a sense of how they can take ownership and take action. So the program itself is framed under three heads, which is discover, connect, and take action. So the first part is where we take them on a walk, and they're able to sort of see their neighborhood in a different light. And then the second part is where they connect the dots and make sort of a reading of what they saw on the ground and through a series of exercises. And then finally there is a session where we also encourage them to take some action. And this could include something as simple as writing a letter to your cooperator and saying, this is a problem, can you fix this? But yeah, just basically instilling in them that idea that, you have to be, guardians of your own physical environment in some way or the other. Um, we also worked on a capacity building exercise for this group of institutions in Tirunelveli this year. It was where we um, looked at building an eco-house prototype within their campus. Now, this is a group of engineering colleges in Chennai, a very large group of institutions, and with several, each all of them had a civil engineering department, in fact. But like when I visited their library, they didn't have a single book on sustainable development. Neither did their syllabus accommodate anything of this sort. So the Eco House prototype was something where it was like a demo house unit that we built hands-on with like labor from their institution, from their group of institutions. They had their own sort of, no, also just, I mean, apart from the group of educational institutions, they were also a charitable organization that were very much involved in building housing for a lot of communities that were there in Tirunelveli. So there was housing that was being built en masse, and all of it was very, sort of standard construction. And the idea was to see if, a different way of construction using alternative technologies could be introduced to them, and that if this could have a multiplier effect through their efforts, we would be able to have a small impact on the carbon footprint of such construction in smaller cities such as these. So yeah, this, as you can see, a lot of teaching their local labor, their local team of construction labor that was involved in building their housing projects, and all their civil engineering school students, civil engineering college students who were also, seeing this kind of thing for the very first time. Um, 2019, we had an opportunity to collaborate with a set of environmental um, engineers on an ecological master plan for a cluster of lakes in the southern part of Chennai. Uh, and what we did was to come up with a community outreach strategy towards to facilitate this sort of ecological master plan. So Siriseries is a village that is located in the peri-urban part of Chennai, southern part of Chennai, and we engaged with the residents over here, like half of whom were native population and half who were, people who had migrated in recent years because they were displaced through urbanization in the city and so on. And our idea was, or rather, our aim was to understand what was the relationship to this cluster of lakes that seem to have been anchor for these settlements in the past, and now there was just no ties to it at all. Like uh, most of the people who spoke to said that they never visited the lake, and they've never visited in the last 4 or 5 years. In fact, although you know over I mean, like historically, this is where everything has happened. Like, I mean, the lake was their life, and and somehow that tie had been completely severed over a period of time. So this project was about trying to understand their past relationship and their future aspirations. And through a series of community engagements, we tried to understand what it is that they would like to, um, uh, you know, um, see as a future for this lake. And I think we had also noticed an interesting shift in the way the demographic was panning out. Is that there was a native population who were predominantly agricultural, but then with an SEZ that had come in, an IT SEZ that had come in, and this had brought in a whole set of like different demographic, like gated communities. So it was a really strange makeup, because you'd see like a very traditional tiled roof house, with a veranda and, katte and so on. And then right next to it, we would see a gated community or a small apartment complex, and so, oddly juxtaposed next to each other. And this diagram here on the right actually shows that distinction very clearly, because the green is the responses from the natives and as to what they wanted, and the red is actually what the people from the gated community want. And you can see a very clear discrepancy. Like the natives, majority of them wanted a hospital slash PHC and a bus service, and and I think the priorities for those in the gated communities were walking trail and solid waste management and so on. Like you could see a sort of very conflicting priorities between the two and how they seem to be coexisting in the same place. But anyway, long story short, 2019, this is what the lake looked like, and a year from that, this is what it got restored into. Um, Work is still not finished. We're currently, I mean, there's been a shortage of funds, so work has stopped, and the this means that we were not able to sort of put in some of the things that the community wanted. Like for instance, there was a need for vocational training centers that a lot of the women asked for, because they said that they don't have any means for sustainable livelihood, and if they could be able to do something from the comfort of their homes, then they would really like it, and so on. But yeah, I mean, one step at a time. I think what we started with was to restore the lake ecology, and then see if we could continue working along the banks for other improvements. Uh, this year we also worked, the second half of this year we actually worked in Coimbatore, and where we were able to use a tactical urbanism approach to bring awareness on the importance for creating walking and cycling infrastructure in the city. So we worked with this street in the middle of the city. It's called Big Bazaar Road, and was also a street on which the municipal corporation is located. And it's a major arterial road, also a state highway, in fact. And so a lot of traffic. And from our studies, we understood that this was also a major transit hub, because there were like 9 bus stops located within a 300-meter stretch of this, and each of the bus stops basically having bus routes that take you to different parts for a regional connectivity as well. This was also the main thoroughfare leading into the main trading hub, like your Pete area for Coimbatore itself. And so there was a lot of like movement, pedestrian movement. There's also a very mix of uses, because there were schools. There were like about 8 schools in walking vicinities, so we noticed that a lot of school children also congregated here. They got off buses and they went to their schools, and a lot of senior citizens who were coming to avail various government facilities, because a lot of government offices and like the municipal corporation itself was located here. So there was a lot of sort of movement of various different uh, demographics of people that we noticed, and very less comfort and safety aspects that were considered for the amount of for the volume of pedestrians that were here. So we conducted a set of public perception surveys, trying to understand needs and aspirations of people over there. And one of the things that they said was, or at least some of the things that they said was, there's a lack of seating, and there's a lot of there's just no shade at all. So becomes a very uncomfortable environment through the day. So our interventions that we designed were then uh, kind of tailored to address some of these gaps that were highlighted to us in our engagement with the community. So you can see in the picture on the right that we've got seating. We put up very simple shading devices up there, and on the floor we uh, you know put down some games for the school children who were going to be accessing to have a little fun while they're on the street. There was also a road safety issue, so we looked at redesigning a lot of the pedestrian crossings, also to encourage people to use the pedestrian crossings, rather than crossing randomly ad hoc everywhere, which is very common practice for us to do. As you can see, is all of the various different elements, crossings, safe crossings, turning radii, so that the vehicles also could be streamlined. We extended the pedestrian footpath area. This painted section here is an extended pedestrian area because we felt that there was a lot of space given for vehicular movement within the street right of way, and there was therefore, in the interest of an equitable distribution of street right of way, we also looked at expanding the pedestrian pathways. um, some images of interventions. So this was the bus stop side, and this was the amount of street space that we reclaimed. It was really interesting to see how everyone behaved at the end of it, the post evaluation. A lot of positive response from pedestrians and passers-by. We spoke to the bus drivers as well, because we were concerned that they would not adhere to the changes in the right of way, and that they would start driving where they were not supposed to. But then a lot of them, I think 95% of them did not deviate, and they kept to their lanes. And interestingly, they also noticed that there was no traffic congestion, contrary to what normally people think, that when you reduce the vehicular space, it will result in increased congestion. Whereas it's actually the opposite. When you reduce it, it streamlines the movement, and then traffic flows a lot more smoothly. So that was that. And then this was last year. Oddly enough, the year that we had the lockdown was, I think, one of our busiest years. As you can see, this list kind of really, really expanded. We started off like as we started working from home by just internal for ourselves, because we were looking at various conversations around where we're getting our food, and then all of us were started comparing notes. This is just within our office. We started comparing notes like, oh, we got something from here, we got something. This market is closed. There's a temporary market that's opened up here. So we kind of got around to mapping the food supply chain in our city before COVID, and then also what was going on during COVID, and then keeping both of these in mind, we also came up with a post-COVID scenario where we thought we could combine the best of both worlds and then see what was going wrong in a pre-COVID era, and then what we could do to sort of revisit the relationship between food and our city. This was totally an internal, fun project that we did over a period of a few days, just to keep ourselves from going insane because we were working at home. And then because participatory planning is such an integral part of our work, and we were very handicapped. We felt extremely handicapped through all through lockdown, not being able to meet our stakeholders, not being able to visit our sites and so on. And therefore, we started sort of brainstorming as to how we can work around these solutions, work around these problems, and come up with simple solutions that could ensure that we don't give up on participatory planning. We put out a publication. You can find it on our website if any of you are interested. But yeah, we just put this out there for people to continue their efforts and not give up on an approach that involves people in their designs. And then similar to what we did with our municipal engineers in Chennai, we worked with the Coimbatore City Municipal Corporation to enhance their capacities for developing infrastructure in the city for walking and cycling. So we conducted this workshop over a period of again, this was also about 5-6 days, which involved working with their municipal engineers to understand streets, to document them, to map them, to arrive at possible options for how the street section could be redesigned, and then also test their solutions out on the ground through a very quick tactical urbanism approach, where we just went and cordoned off the street, cut down the street right of way based on their designs, using just white chalk powder and so on, and then making observations on how whether the vehicles were responding to the revised road geometries and whether the pedestrians were following again the revised road geometries. Uh, we also came up with we also gamified this in some way. We made a board game that um, spoke about how NMT or other non-motorized transport, walking and cycling are, just as a way to draw awareness on how they are more sustainable and better modes of transport. So there was a game that we had developed also as part of this exercise. We also in Pondicherry did a very extensive 4,000 household survey where we tried to understand different, transport scenarios, like how people are commuting, what are their patterns, what are their difficulties, and therefore seeing if we could, have a scenario for mobility in Pondicherry that is focused a lot more on sustainable modes of transport rather than people having to opt for private modes. Uh, we also participated with Kochi on the Cycles for Change Challenge, which was hosted by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And and uh, and as part of this, we created about 5 kilometers, actually 5 kilometers to and fro, like that's like about close to 9 kilometers of cycling pop-up cycle lanes that we installed in the city of Kochi. And I don't know if you remember our Observe program that was aimed at high school kids. We couldn't go to the schools, we couldn't meet the kids in the schools. So we converted this into an Observe at Home module. So we made quick videos that we sent out to the kids in the schools that we were working with. And we continued our engagement with them, by giving them small activities that they could do right from their homes without having to go out, maintaining social distancing and so on. Um, we also launched a grants program called the Observation Action Network Grants Program. This was in collaboration with the National Association of Students of Architecture. And as part of this, we're giving out a grant of $500 to 3 winning teams who had identified a real sort of urban challenge in a site and had a solution for implementation. The grant was to be utilized for implementing their solutions. It could be a prototype, it could be a full-fledged solution itself, whatever be it. Um, this also the year that I think Shalini mentioned that I'm a mentor to smart city projects in Hubli and Agartala. In Hubli, working on a Nala rejuvenation project. This is a Nala that flows. The picture on the right is the Nala that flows north-south direction in the city of, all through cutting right through the city of Hubli. And this picture on the left is from Agartala. This is the Howrah Riverfront development project, which also flows through the heart of the city, and working to look at a very sort of, green infrastructure approach to reviving and rejuvenating these water ecosystems for the city. Um, we also working with the State Commissionerate for Differently Abled in collaboration with the Disability Rights Alliance on what is called the Museum of Possibilities. This is a project where where we're setting up a sort of a model space, museum space that demonstrates how persons with disabilities can function independently and go about their lives, spread across the domains of live, work, and play. So our design includes a small living module, which is like a model flat unit in which you have, your living, kitchen, dining, bedroom, and toilet, and also other domains such as work and play, where we're also having ways in which a visitor to the museum can come and see that that there are possibilities for them to engage in these kind of activities, just like any of us do. Um, we also we actually won a grant for this project in March last year in 2020, called the Cities for Play project. This project is rooted in the idea of creating child-friendly infrastructure, and particularly focused on low-income settlements and the commons, the urban commons within these settlements. So it is a project that aims to transform these kind of spaces within these settlements into spaces that are centered around children. So in a sense, reimagining, urban commons through the eyes of children, and, emphasis with an emphasis on sports and fitness and therefore in turn health and so on. Um, we're also working on this project called the Accessible Beaches of Chennai, and this is project that is rooted in the right to persons right to disability act, which mandates that all public spaces need to be made accessible for persons with disabilities. And in Chennai, the beach being our largest public space, the idea was to make sure that persons with disabilities can enjoy this beach as do the rest of us. So this is project that is basically a pathway that takes you to the waters, takes persons with disabilities to the waters, be able to navigate the sand and get to the water. And there some interesting complications here. One is, of course, the sandy soil and building on sandy soil. The second part was also the coastal zone regulation. We needed to get clearance from the central government to get this project approved. So after a very long wait, we've got clearance and like kind of moving on getting this thing built. Uh, we also started working on a mega streets project in Chennai. This is a neighborhood revitalization project catalyzed through street design. So we're looking at this neighborhood of Adyar in Chennai, where we're working on 20 kilometers of streets. The project also involves a complete overhaul of all the utilities. I mean, if you're familiar with the Tender Shore project in Bangalore, it's a similar approach. The street design uh, aspect it takes a complete streets approach, complete overall of both underground and above ground utilities. And in addition, it has a neighborhood approach. So it kind of looks at like a full neighborhood revitalization through a network of streets that are running through it. So this is a project that we're working on, and uh, I will stop there with the projects. I think all of these are still on our desk. There's some more new projects that we're also working on this year, but we'll come to that later. Um, but broadly, if you see, um, our preoccupation with public space is covers these three aspects, if I may call them. Like, one of them is, of course, the production of space itself, and you know I am referring to Lefebvre's production of space, the sort of representation of it, the creation of space, and so on. Like, and the people that are involved in it, whether it is, the stakeholders that are involved in the decision making, or the stakeholders that are end users and beneficiaries of the projects that we are working on. And the third part is the positioning, which is, defining our role in the project. And I'm not sure if you picked that up from the presentation, but in every project, we've had a different role that we have kind of defined for ourselves. Um, as the best possible role that we could play in the project. So it's important for us in every project that we work on, that we are very conscious of these three things. Um, there are also three guiding questions for us as we work on projects. One of them is, how does one become local when designing? So what we do and how we seek out people, and how we sort of seek out information and data and so on, is all in an effort to understand how one becomes local when designing. And then we're conscious of how we can include the elements climate, water, and soil. So in our as we go about um, planning and proposing and designing our interventions, these are things that kind of keep us driven, like whether are we being conscious of the climate, are we being conscious of water as a resource, are we being conscious of the soil and the geology at that place itself. And lastly, how can we include the invisible? If you see most of our projects, it's about hearing out people, about placing them at the core of the design process itself. Most of the time, that doesn't happen, or at least traditionally in projects, these voices are never captured. And I think it's important for us to capture these invisible voices, to capture invisible, elements or things as well, things that are not obvious, but for us to seek out these things and put them into our process as integral aspects of it. Um, so that's all. This is us. We are Urban Design Collective. We are a collaborative platform to create livable cities through participatory planning. Uh, these are our focus areas. We work on improving walkability, improving livability of neighborhoods, the quality of public realm and built environment, improving awareness on sustainable development and community engagement. And we use a combination of methods to get to all of this, whatever it takes, like literally pressing all the buttons, because just because of how complex the nature of our built environments are. So that's all from me. Um,
Thank you for the distinctive and very stimulating presentation, ma'am. I'd like to open the floor to questions now. Students.
Okay, first of all, guys, switch on your videos, whoever is able to. Vidya, how are you feeling?
I'm okay.
Okay, so can you switch on your video too, please? Okay, then. Guys, questions, otherwise I'll have to start. I always have questions. So. Okay, I'll just very quickly break the ice with a small question. Vidya, first of all, thanks so much for doing this talk, and it couldn't have been more timely in the context of our studio, because we are looking at the concept of conviviality and in times of physical distancing. So that was the theme for our studio this semester. And in any case, it's amazing to see the range of projects you worked on and you continue to work on. So that's always nice. And the infographics, of course, are something I'm always happy to see. So you mentioned, I very specifically would like to ask about, because our studio too is facing the same challenges, right? About how do you reach out and work with communities at a time when you're just not able to step out? And you mentioned, thanks for directing us to your project from last year. You said you put up on your website, so maybe the students can go look at that. Could you just very quickly maybe point out some major differences between what you found in working in the field and doing the online thing? What were the major, what did you feel very acutely? What gaps did you perceive, or what shortcomings?
Well, I think just to start off with, it was very frustrating for us.
Mm.
um, for instance, when we were working with the Coimbatore Municipal Corporation and the engineers, like there was some client protocol that also mandated that we cannot visit Coimbatore, and meet the engineers face to face. Like, so we had to resort to doing phone interviews with them. Because we before arriving at a curriculum for their training, we wanted to also do a kind of a needs assessment and an understanding of their capacities and what they would like and what would work for them and so on. So we ended up doing these 1 hour long interviews with them on the phone, and it's really that connect is just not there. Like, I mean, it was difficult to do it online. Like, we could have done it face to face on a Zoom call or something, but then they didn't have access to it. And many of them were not tech savvy enough. They didn't have a computer. They didn't have whatever. Like, so the only way to reach them was the phone. And so yeah, that was just one example of how we managed that. In the Cities for Play project, for instance, we conducted small focus groups. Like, we tried to do it in a controlled manner. Like, we worked with community, some community champions, local champions, and we scheduled, like, in their room, to send like some 8 to 10 people, and then we would sit with them, and then we would talk, and then we would send them out, and then send another batch in. And so we did things like that. Yeah, I think these were two of the examples that we did. In Hubli and Agartala, actually, in Hubli, I had suggested them to do a radio show, which they did actually. So they kind of took out a block on a local FM station, and over a period of 3 days, and over the course of the 3 days, everyone from the smart city office went on air and spoke about the project. So in a way, there was telling people about the project, and it was also a call-in. So listeners could actually call in and ask questions and so on. So that was like something that they did over a period of 3 days, which kind of worked really nicely, and I think had a really good impact. And that was because it was a city level project. It had a really good impact. Now, like, a lot of people remember it, and they were, and because it was spread over a three-day period, it wasn't something that anyone missed. Somebody could have told you about it from the previous day, and then you tuned in the next day. And it was, I think, on one of those prime time shows where the RJ was a very popular RJ. And so yeah, I think we managed to do a good coverage because of that. In Agartala, they opted for a public, a really citywide public survey, similar to that ease of living index thing that was done across multiple cities. And they had just finished that, so they were kind of like confident that they could pull it off at that scale. So they did that. They had QR codes, and they put out stuff out, and got a lot of opinion on the project, and what people wanted from it, because again, these were city level projects. So yeah, these were some of the things that we did as sort of solutions to deal with that inability to meet our stakeholders face to face. But yeah, definitely was a very frustrating. I mean, my whole thing this year was like, please, not another lockdown, because we can't do it all over again.
Sure.
But yeah, here we are sitting at home again, and
I think particularly it affects people who are not tech savvy and also don't have access to tech, right? And that's where you get seriously limited.
Yeah, like with low income settlements, that digital divide is like, everything can't be online,
Right.
like one of the schools that we started working with is in one of the largest resettlement colonies in Chennai, and the school actually facilitated. So those little videos that we were making and sending to them, we made them like, about 1 minute videos, because parents, they would have to access it on their parents' cell phones, and they don't have that much data, right? Like their data packs are also like limited. So we didn't want to make like, we couldn't make like long videos and so on. So we made like really short 1 minute videos that could then be sent on WhatsApp. We'll send it to the school teacher. The school teacher will send it to all the parents, and then all the parents, I mean, the kids would do the activity, and then they would send it back on WhatsApp to us. So yeah, it was very tedious, to do all of this. But yeah, I think for us it was like, if we don't do it, then we don't do any work. So we figured out like all kinds of ways to keep things moving.
But innovative. Thank you. Other questions, guys? Come on.
I think everyone is exhausted.
Yeah, weeks are pretty exhausting. But they are supposed to be working on, they're starting to work on that. We finished our site. What did we finish? We finished our group work. So just starting out on their own individual projects. So I'm expecting that they have some questions at least.
I think they require a little more thinking that what question to ask.
Hello, sir.
So, yeah, meanwhile, hello, Vidya, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Good.
Long time. I
I'm
didn't
fine.
know that
Are
you
you
were.
in No, I was there. I was abroad. I was there. Are you in Kerala now currently, or are you
No,
in
no,
Chennai
I'm in
only?
Chennai only. My
Okay,
home
okay,
is
because
Chennai. I'm in Chennai now.
okay, because Kerala something is now
Yeah,
cooking up on the
I
coast.
saw
Okay.
some pictures from Kerala today, a little earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a wonderful presentation. I think a variety of projects you presented, and when they are these children, when they are working on urban design project, it also conveys that how important it is to connect the stakeholders, the people on the ground. I think very good examples you have given them of your real work. I think it will inspire them, and because now they are about to start with their projects, I think there must be a lot of useful learning from your presentation. So thank you very much for being on this platform. Hope
Thank
everything
you
is
for
fine at
joining.
your
I
end.
mean, yeah, all fine. Yeah.
Please take care and stay
I
safe.
hope you're also
Yeah.
safe and everyone in your
Yeah, I
family as
hope
well.
the things improve in Bangalore also slowly.
I know
It's
it's been very
it's not getting
distressing
any
news from
better.
everywhere.
Yeah, it's not getting any better. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have our PG students also here, MArch students. So guys, it's open to everyone. So please feel free to ask questions. So some of our students attended your talk. I told you, right, Vidya, the COA talk, social, several of them.
Ah, okay. Oh, right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think
I had done I think I've done a shorter version.
much shorter
of this.
version of
Yeah,
this.
because
So
they said there was only 15-minute window that they gave for the COA talk.
that, I mean, I obviously I have questions. Shalini, would you like to ask something? Shalini's a
I
landscape
think
architect. Yeah.
Devashri is online, and I think she has some issues with her audio. So she has a question to for the lecture about the lecture. She's asking if there are any suggestions that you would like to tell us about how to go about an urban design project when there is zero interaction with people on site.
Well, my immediate reaction is to not do it. um, yeah, because I mean, really, you should never do an urban design project if you're not able to access the site or the stakeholders, like, because it's just not the correct approach to do it. Um, but like, as a workaround, like, I think if you're willing to make that effort to reach out to people who can be your eyes on the ground for you. Um, like, I think one of the things that we considered doing for our Cities for Play project, for instance, was to have someone from the community, uh, you know, walk us through that site on a video call or something. And we did this, in fact, because when we were working on our Kochi project, for instance, um, we were not able to go to Kochi for the Cycles for Change one, where we were trying to install the pop-up bike lanes. We had very thankfully we had one intern who went home, and she was from Kochi. It was like a very serendipitous coincidence that happened. So we asked her to walk us. We did a virtual site visit. So she was on Zoom, and she like walked through the entire street stretch, and we did this over a period of days, like, because it was 5 kilometers. So every day, like, one kilometer, like, and we had to do both sides, right? So it was like she'll have to walk on one side, and then like, wait, stop, what is there, what is here, look down, are there drains here, this and that, and then she'll cross over, go to the other side, and then walk back this side. So literally seeing the site and noting down, taking, and then of course, we also had another person take a very continuous series of photographs for us. Like, we did the serial vision approach, where we asked that person to not change the angle, but continuously take photographs every 25 meters, so that we had a clear reading. So we got that set first, and then we studied that set. And then our intern went on site. So we had marked things that we needed clarified from the photograph. So she would, when she was on site, we asked her, we're seeing something in the photograph. Can you go closer and show it to us so we can see what is it exactly? So yeah, it was very tedious, but that is what we did actually for that particular project.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening. This is Ari. Ma'am, I had a question. Ma'am, for my thesis, I'm trying to look at something along the lines of, say, transformational spaces, and trying to center it around behavior of people around architecture. So, ma'am, your project in the Coimbatore thing about like how you transform the pedestrian areas, that I could sort of connect with. So, ma'am, given this time where we can't really talk to people and say we're relying on theoretical sources, ma'am, can you tell us if and how, if you've anchored any project to a theoretical base to try and understand people's behavior and maybe direct it towards transformational spaces?
No, no, we've not. I mean, I think I think it's kind of obvious from our portfolio as well. It's like um, the theory that we refer to is only for sort of technique or for validation of our, or in some sense, some kind of like validation of our analysis or approach. But beyond that, I mean, there's there's very less theoretical premise to our work. We've never been inclined to that. And it's kind of the other end of the spectrum. Um, so yeah, I'm sorry, I can't help you out here.
Uh,
Right.
Vidya, Hiranmai has a question. She's unable to be on the call right now. So she's asking, what are the challenges of getting people to participate? So the other side, one thing is just the challenge modalities of
Right.
arranging all of that, but then getting others to respond, people to respond?
Okay, that's actually a good question. There are, I think this has to do with communication design. I mean, at least the way we see it, like the whole engagement part, we look at it as communication and outreach strategy and design, right? Like, so we are trying to understand what is it that would elicit that response. We know that you can't use a one size fits all thing for everyone and every group. And like, if you remember the example of where we worked with the Coimbatore Municipal Corporation engineers, we made a game, and that was literally because they're so fatigued with their regular work schedule, and instead of running through a PPT with a slide that talks about the benefits of walking and cycling, we thought, why not gamify it for them and then have them play. And these are like adults. I have to tell you, they just completely went mental. Like they we had to like ask, like literally pull the board away and say, we have to vacate the premises now, please stop, like, because like we had capped it at like some 10 rounds, and they were like, no, we want some more, we want to play some more, and they just wouldn't stop. And so many of them were like, we've never played games like since we were 10 years old. Like, I'm playing now after like some 40 years or something. But at the end, it was also very, like, they got what it is, like the intention of the game was actually to tell them that this is a better mode of transport and that there are benefits to choosing it over other modes, and that was what we were trying to get at. But I think the format and the design of the engagement material is very important. And also, when you're working with kids, what you take to them, when you are working with adults, what you're taking to them. And I think there's a lot of pre-planning that is required in terms of being clear about the outcome, like what is it that we are seeking from that engagement. You don't want to waste anybody's time, right? Like, so whether it's a survey design, or whether it is post evaluation, like for instance in the Coimbatore Tactical Urbanism post evaluation, we had put out these we'd set up these hand carts, those mobile hand carts that vendors use, right? Like we had rented out one of those, and we put out panels, like A1 size panels on it, which had just like visual representation of, do you like this or do you like this? And all they had to do was put a sticker on it, and that's it. There was no talking, like and these are people on the street who are passing by. They're occupied with a lot of other things. They don't have time to sit down and chat with you for like an hour or something, like, so it was really quick. All they have to do is come look at it. It's like, oh, I like this. I'm gonna put a sticker on it, and that's it. So I think just being conscious of who you are talking to and what could appeal to them as a. It's like talking in their language. You don't talk to somebody who doesn't know that language. And you can go on speaking for an hour, and if they don't get anything, it doesn't make any sense. So literally. Doing your homework in terms of understanding or figuring out what language would get to them, and yeah, so I sometimes it's hit or miss. We've also said one of the focus areas for us is to improve engagement, so we also keep trying to come up with different tools. Like the Where is Your City installation is something very simple. Anyone, we put it out on, like, streets, in busy streets where all people have to just come and pin something, and then like very quick, like it doesn't require that much conversation, but you get what you want from them. So yeah, I mean, I think there is a very heavy design component to that, to getting
background
what you want. Yeah, to getting the kind of desired outcome from an engagement.
And as an extension to that, I was just wondering, because you also shown us the illustrations of these charrettes or the public meetings. were there any instances where you have to get them to speak with each other? In the sense, of course, it goes into the realm of mediation and all that, so maybe that's where others come in. But were there any instances, because especially I was thinking of, the toilets, the beachfront, the community, and or if some conflicts, between different groups, were there any?
Yeah.
How would you deal with something?
Yeah, there was one, actually, since you brought up that exact same project, that was one where we had a conflict.
Felt like that might be one place they would.
Yeah, we did. So we actually got a CRZ approval on one location, and that so after we got the CRZ approval, uh, it was us actually who brought it up with the corporation that we should probably have a stakeholder meeting with the fishing community over there, because it's coming on their beach and we should talk to them. And they were like, oh, we don't want to do this, and they didn't seem very interested to do the engagement, and they said, you go and talk to them. So we went and spoke to them, and we kind of gave them a briefing of the project, and they told us that they were kind of not very thrilled. They said, why are you putting it? This is our community and our part of the beach. And this is where our fishing activities are happening. Like our boats are here, our nets are here, and we dry our fish here and everything. And they were like, why don't you do it in a more public part of the beach? And I said, yeah, I mean, we also would like that, but for some strange reason, the CRZ approval seems to have come here. Even though we asked for it in another location, they have suggested an alternate location and said, you put it here. And which is why we wanted to come and talk to you. So we spoke to them, and they did express hesitation. And also additionally, their funeral procession path was along that exact same location. And a cemetery was on the other side. And so, yeah, we knew this whole background and everything, but but we spoke to them, and then we organized for a session where the corporation officials would come and meet them, and we wanted them to hear it from the corporation, because we are not the only people involved. We're only designing it. We're not, the agency is the corporation. So that meeting went a bit rough, because they said something and then they said something, and then I thought they were going to hit each other. Yeah, totally. Like, and then we had to, like, from our side, we had to, like, kind of mediate a little bit and be like, okay, fine. We will come back to this later, and then, like, basically pulled everyone off and then sent them off, and then eventually what we did was we dropped the location. Like, we went out, and then we spoke to the corporation officials and said, listen, this is not going to be happening, like, because it started off on a wrong foot. They have very legit reasons for not wanting it there. So yeah, we moved it. We're not putting it in another location, but yeah, this was, and in fact, I think for us also, like, we felt like a little as if we made a mistake. Like, we felt like we should have had a stakeholder engagement much early on. But I think the sequence of events was also that this wasn't our preferred location anyway. And, we were given this location. But yeah, that was one wild instance. Another one was in the project with the lake restoration. So the Panchayat leader, or rather ex-Panchayat leader, considering we don't have any local body elections since 2016, the ex-Panchayat leader was very averse to the idea of participation. He was like, when we met him, he was like, oh, no, you don't need to ask them anything. Like, I know what they want. And we were like, no, it's okay, but we still want to talk to them because we want to understand what's going on here. We don't know anything about this place, so we would like to talk to them. And so there was a little kind of like, massaging and everything that we had to do of his ego and everything. And then, but he let us do it eventually. Like, if we had faced off, he may have said, don't do anything, but I think we kind of handled it okay. Like, we managed to do we met all the households. And eventually he was generous enough that the large community space where we had the final meeting was actually a hall that he owned, and he gave it to us for free that day. So yeah, I think it's a lot of, people management as well that you have to do to make sure that you're able to do the engagement.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, you talked about the various hats a designer, urban designer has to don. So this is one more, right? Mediator and
Yeah.
diplomat. Stuff that school doesn't necessarily prepare you for, but then perhaps you learn.
100%.
Thank you. Other questions? Think, if there are no other questions, I guess we can wrap up for the evening. Yeah.
Hi, Vidya. Deepak
Ah,
here.
Deepak. Okay. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Because we are primarily dealing with this UG program where the students are supposed to work on the architectural part of it and its integration into the urban context. So we would like to have, I would like to know your idea of how architecture needs to be approached from an urban context, because we will be giving them something which is a very public building where they can engage with the city. How to look at architecture from the viewpoint of the city and vice versa. Because I know that you've also worked with a couple of architectural projects with Mahesh too. And Mahesh also, when he designs, he kind of draws these inferences from the city on a broader scale, and also kind of tries to engage with it at a local scale also, just with the street and so on. So because here the the larger issue for them will be actually to work with architecture and how it kind of starts engaging with the urban at an urban level.
There's no different approach. First of all, we don't work on architecture projects. So that is, like per se, we don't work on architecture projects in our office. And but for me, the approach, I don't have a different approach. It's like, the same things that I spoke about, the idea of the production of space, who is it for, and your position on it. So and the sort of the questions that drive us, about being local and engaging with the elements in the intervention. So I don't have any other advice beyond what I've already spoken about. If it's in the if the project is, this is an urban design studio, so which is also why I'm saying that the approach doesn't change for me. Like, I've taught urban design studios, and this is the same thing that I would have told students in that studio as well. Nothing additional or different.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Ma'am, this is Abid. I have a doubt. Like if when we take public participation in any project, so when we take up all their issues and their concerns, but is there any after a point as a designer, like can we draw a line of how much they dictate the way the place is designed?
That's a really good question, actually. I think one rule for participation is when you're engaging, you never, sort of, you should be very careful to never overpromise and underdeliver. So when you are engaging with public, always make sure, or your stakeholders, whoever they may be, like be very realistic about the scope of the project, what is it that you're doing, why you're doing, and why you are seeking their input on it, and also be clear about how their input will be utilized in the project. Right? I mean, I've had instances where some people have, like I think recently someone reached out to me, a master's student from some college, I don't know, saying that she's doing a project on form-based coding in a neighborhood or something. And then she was like, and she wanted to do some community engagement um, for that. And and so I asked her, why is she doing community engagement? What is her desired outcome for that? And she said, I don't know. My teacher, my guide asked me to do it. Which is like, I mean, I told her, I said, you just don't do it then, because if you don't, if there's no real reason for conducting a community engagement for your project, then don't do it, because you're unnecessarily wasting your time, somebody else's time, in them responding to you and your questions, and and if that is not even going into the project, uh, you know, then there's just no point. Uh, so yeah, I think it's one is it's important to keep the expectations managed when you are engaging with public. Um, Second is what your the aspect that you are talking about is how much do they get to determine what is going on, right? Now this is also related back to the same thing, it's like, what is the nature of the engagement? Do you want them to help you with the solutions, or do you want them to help you with the input uh, that will help you arrive at a solution that works for everyone? Or does it, or is it, like, is it that you're showing them something and asking them for a referendum, right? Now, you were in the class like in the afternoon today, so you must know this, that there are different types of engagement. So it's like you have to be very clear about what is the kind of engagement, and therefore what is the level of input that you are seeking when you're meeting your stakeholders. Um, as facilitators, we get to decide that. Like, you don't want somebody to, you're not asking in a stakeholder engagement meeting for someone to come and draft your design for you, or, like take butter sheet and draw it out for you, right? But it, whether you are able to draw the correct thing on your butter sheet at the end of the engagement is the question. So yeah, it's not as simple as just going out there and talking to 2-3 people and then doing a survey and whatnot. Um like so for instance, when we are working on that project for the persons with disabilities, and this is sort of looking at making public spaces accessible, we're also trying to understand from their perspective how they use public spaces. I don't know how a person with disability uses a public space or sees a public space, or what difficulties they have, because I can't speak for them, right? So in that case, I want to understand, the minutest experience detail from that person as to, what it is to be outside, and what it is you know, to not be able to experience something that I can experience, So, um, so when we were working on the design for that, we were asking them at every step, like we asked them to trace the movement we walked them through the design, we asked them to trace the movement of them through that space, and asked if, there was at any point, if there was a difficulty, whether it was turning a wheelchair, or whether it was not being able to read something, or whatever, like, or whether, for like there are, when you're working with persons with cognitive disorders, they have an issue with contrasting light and colors. So those are things that you and I don't know. And I want, very specific design input to make sure that I'm doing it correctly in that case. So yeah, it's very custom designed. I'm saying the engagement itself is very custom designed, and I think we can control, and this is what I meant by positioning. Like when the way we position ourselves, we can control the extent of the feedback that we receive and how that is being incorporated into the design.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, I had another question, ma'am. Like when it comes to dealing with or working with marginalized communities like transgenders or such, so there come many societal and political taboo or pressure in those regard. So how do we work around that, like to create awareness or normalize the design of whatever we are coming up with? How do we normalize that in the society?
I will tell you this, that we can't solve all the problems. Okay. As designers, we should never think that we can solve all the problems. But it is our responsibility to make sure that we are not adding to that problem, right? So when we're talking about designing spaces and the whole idea of inclusive planning and planning, keeping in mind all the different stakeholders, and I keep repeating that, like, to be able to map and identify all the different stakeholders, and this will include transgender and all marginalized groups, low income settlements, even women, children, senior citizens, all of these people, when you're talking about public space design, all of them come into the picture. And it's just from our side, what we can do is to make sure that the design intervention that we are creating is not in any way helping to, further that, stigma and separation and, keeping them away from that space, right? If you've made a space that women are not feeling safe or transgender people are not feeling safe or disabled people cannot access, then we have made a mistake. It's like there's a clear flaw in the way that design has been conceived and executed. So as designers, I think this much is in our control. Please do not ever think that you can solve a social problem through design. What we can very at best do is to not make it worse, both environmental and social, actually, for that matter.
Ma'am, actually, I was referring to a design that is particularly for them, like a project that is particularly for that community.
How will you make something that is only for them, actually? Like,
no, as in elevating their
no, you don't need to do that. Like, I think the key is to keep it equitable. It's like equal access for everyone. I think that's where you need to be. That's where you need to, be thinking at. You don't, this is again like, placing one above another and saying, I'm going to do this. And, that can aggravate certain things. We don't want to do that. This is equitable. Everyone is, it is a space that, is welcoming for everyone. I think that itself is a difficult task to achieve, like whether it's in your in built form or unbuilt form. In both cases, to make space, make a design that is able to be equitable is actually a huge challenge itself.
Acknowledging difference without making it very obvious. I guess that's a very challenging question. Right?
It is. Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. Like, you don't need to, the solution to achieving equity is not to celebrate that difference or, rather exaggerate or emphasize that difference and say, oh, look, here is, a marginalized community and I'm making this for them. Like it doesn't, like when we were working on the accessible beach pathway, like one of the things that the Disability Rights Alliance people who we were consulting with regularly said that don't make our pathway in a place that is like separate. Like, don't say this is where we go and this is where other people go.
Mm.
They wanted their pathway where everyone goes. They're like, we want to be with everyone, and therefore don't exclude us by putting our pathway in a place that, says, oh, this is we made this specifically for you. So here you go here. It was something as simple as that.
Otherwise that itself might feel like discrimination, right? By creating a different solution also. But yeah, very good question, Ar.Vidhya. It's very challenging question, and hopefully you will tackle it in the semesters to come. An interesting design challenge for you.
Ma'am, actually,
we can see in the US, ma'am, black pride trails and such, like they were made for particularly to celebrate that. So I was asking in that regard.
So if you're referring to that Black Lives Matter mural that was painted on those are a little bit of an extraordinary circumstance. Like there was, when we were talking about protest as a form of participation in democracy as well in the afternoon. And so the fact that that space allowed you to either have a gay pride march there, or for a group of people to come and paint Black Lives Matter there or something, like as a way to express themselves, right? Like, it's a sign that it's an inclusive space. And I think it's like, if our public spaces can be that space for non-biased or whatever sort of like equitable sharing of people of different what do you say, different ethnicity, or profiles as they identify themselves, to come and express themselves, which is itself great. Like if you like there were when we did that mapping in Pune of places to avoid and places that give joy, like it was interesting why people avoided certain places, because they didn't feel safe there. And this could have been because of some communal tension, which means that there is something, that and it warrants some further investigation, but maybe the physical form of that place, also doesn't give you that feeling of safety. The morphology of the built form over there doesn't give you a sense of safety there. Like you have concepts like crime prevention through environmental design, CPTD, like even those talk about the relationship between built form and how somebody feels safe or not safe in an environment. And again, those affect women and children and senior citizens and so on. Like, so there is a sort of I think if we are conscious of that relationship between the built form and how it impacts perception of our perception of that space or our experience of that space, that's why I said it's not easy. It's not as easy as it sounds.
I think Prerna had a question, right, Prerna? Maybe that could be our last question for the evening. Yeah, Prerna,
no,
sorry.
I don't have question, but I just wanted to share that in Pune there is one project like in one street, transgenders, they have one their area like a commercial street and all. It's very small street, but their club are there in that Pune area. And even in one slum area, they have one part transgender part where they do paintings and all and awareness. So it's happening in Pune and Mumbai somewhere. I was just saying that.
Yeah, there are concentrations. Like you have what I don't know, gay districts or whatever. Like Castro in San Francisco is a very good example of where people concentrated, and that was just out of solidarity, like people, and we find this in many cities, that people of certain ethnicity or group, who identify themselves in a particular way, will concentrate in a particular neighborhood. So it's similar to that. There may be certain concentrations that they just flocked to a particular place.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else?
Yes, ma'am. Hello. I'm Janvi. So I just had a question regarding the participatory practices specifically. And I just wanted to know, like, what is the process or the challenge in getting people to put forth such proposals? Like, how do you direct conversations such that you get these proposals that you for these designs of the projects?
I think this was the same question that Hiranmay asked about how do we, work with people to get what we want. Just my answer
I
was
think
that
that was like, yeah. I think that was a little more like general. Like I was asking, like because you also showed in that slide a few of those, some of the proposals that you had got as well. So I was just asking regarding that process.
I'm sorry, I'm not following. What proposals did we get?
Regarding the participatory practices that you had shown.
Is there a particular project you're referring to?
I was just referring to that particular slide regarding that participatory practices that you had shown in that. So I was like, how did you get those? How did you get the general people to like put forth those proposals? How did you get the people?
I'm not following which project. We never asked anybody to give us any proposals. So I'm not sure exactly which project you're referring to.
Okay, I'm sorry. I might be mistaken. So.
Good evening, ma'am. This was Akshita. My question goes like after completing the project, the next major problem is how do you maintain it? So was there like any structure or a process that you built to sustain the projects in a longer run? And if it was
Okay, that is a really, really, really good question. And something that we are currently spending a lot of our time and energy in trying to figure out. Because what we're realizing is that there is a lot of opportunities or channels for funding, for like capital funding for putting in something in place. And also what we're discovering is that the funding allocation for the maintenance of these things is like literally zero. So we are actually, and even with the two smart cities that I'm working with, we're trying to figure out a way to arrive at a formal mechanism where the stakeholder engagement and the people or various interest groups can be officially engaged for the operations and maintenance part of those projects once they are made. These are public projects, and so and the municipal corporations maintenance capacities are very poor. So we are trying to see if we can come up with a model where citizen groups can do this. So I don't have an example yet to show you, but I'm hoping that in another 3-4 years but yeah, it's a very real problem in our cities now. Putting up infrastructure is one thing, but putting up public infrastructure is one thing, but maintaining it is another thing altogether. So I will try and answer that in another 3-4 years time for you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Can we close?
Yes.
It's like, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for the very inspiring and very distinctive conversations as well as discourse, ma'am. I'd like to thank the principal and the other faculty members as well who've attended the lecture. And we look forward to see you in the next session, which is on the 19th of May by anthropologist Usha Rao. So thank you.
So Vidya, feel free to join us as well and
Yes,
feel well
please.
soon.
Okay.
Thank you so
Yes.
much. Thanks for doing this. Okay.
Yeah.
Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Have a lovely evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.